Carving out a homeland, recent gains in the wars in Iraq and in Syria are boosting Kurds' hopes of a state of their own. But in a volatile region, what are the challenges ahead and what are the risks? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Nick Clark. Of the many groups currently combating ISIL fighters in Iraq and in Syria, the most effective one is also stateless. Kurdish People's Protection Units, also known as YPG, have successfully recaptured several towns from ISIL, which is more than the Syrian or Iraqi official armies can say. YPG forces are battling ISIL and combining right now, fighting to hold the town on the border between Syria and Turkey they captured in January. And the militia continue to make gains elsewhere. Some say that's because the Kurds aren't just fighting against ISIL, they're also fighting for a homeland. The Kurds have explicitly said they're not at war on behalf of the Iraqi or Syrian governments. They intend to win territory and build a region of their own. And while that perspective might end up being the key to defeating ISIL, it could also lead to yet another war once ISIL is gone. Now, some say the YPG's fervour in this fight comes from their desire for a homeland. There are 30 million Kurds worldwide, but they're scattered across several countries. Half of them are in Turkey, and they make up almost 20% of the Turkish population. 10% of the Iranian population is Kurdish. That's about 8 million people. And the Iraqi region of Kurdistan is home to about 5 to 6 million Kurds, and fewer than 2 million Kurds live in Syria, mostly in the northeast. All right, let's get straight onto it. Introduce our guests. In London, Lydia Wilson, Research Fellow at the Centre for the Resolution of Intractable Conflict at Oxford University. In Ankara, we have Bilal Sambur, Professor of Social Sciences at Yildirim Beyazit University. And in Suleymaniye, Lara Fatah, co-founder of Zan Raw Consulting, operating region-wide in Kurdistan on business and political matters. Lara joins via Skype. Welcome to you all. Good to see you there. Lydia, if I could start with you. These different groups are not all connected geographically, but ideologically they are very much so, aren't they?
All the Kurdish groups? I don't think I would say that. Some of them are the YPG that you were talking about and the PKK share and leader, Abdullah Öcalan. But there are many other Kurdish groups fighting ISIS at the moment. The Peshmerga groups are divided at the moment in Iraqi Kurdistan. There are two separate armies fighting there. We recently heard about clashes between the PKK and an Iranian group, the KDPI in Iran. There were military clashes in the east of Iraqi Kurdistan on the border with Iran. And so, no, I'm not sure that I would say that they were united ideologically. All
right, so this premise that they would collectively want a kind of unified, a greater Kurdistan, if you like, do you think that that is not applicable?
I think a lot of people would like to see that, of course, yes. From my research throughout Kurdistan, I would say that that's fairly unifying dream. I'm not sure about the reality of achieving it. I think there's a lot of diverse opinions on how and when and who are going to take on those sorts of responsibilities.
And that would be because of this infighting that you have mentioned already?
Exactly, yes. There are a lot of political and military disagreements within the different parts of Kurdistan, and also, of course, between the four main parts of Kurdistan.
Bilal Sambur, we've seen the Kurds being represented, indeed they are, a very potent fighting force. What do you think it is that gives them that potency?
First of all, PYD, or let's say Kurdish political and art movement, which includes PKK, KCK and PJAK in Iran, in Iraq and in Turkey. First of all, PYD powers based on this tradition. PYD is a part of PKK network, we could say. So PKK movement, we could say that it has a very long history of struggle. and at the same time it has a very coherent ideological vision which promoted among Kurds. The other things is PKK organized Kurdish society more than any other people. I mean, when Syria war started, PYD is ready to defend its people more than any other ethnic group. And the other point, we could say that PYD makes its case the national case of whole Kurdish population. So when we combine all these factors together, we could say that PYD, it is not just a power within Syria, it is a power in Iran, in Iraq and in Turkey.
So Lara Fatah, those Kurds that are fighting within Syria, those are Kurds that are fighting within Iraq, they're not fighting for Iraq or for Syria, they're fighting for their own territories.
Yes, I would say that's a fair thing to say. On the other hand, I would say it's about your identity. I mean, I don't know that it's necessary straight away about independence. I think initially it's about preserving Kurdish identity and then the right to self-determination which would come afterwards. I think there's an existential threat to Kurdish identity, and that's why all the Kurdish forces have been so successful in their fight against ISIL.
And Lydia, is that something that you would agree with? It's the Kurdish identity
yes.
that's the real strength behind this, if you like.
I would say so, absolutely agree with that. From many interviews that I've conducted with all sorts of different Kurds, it is very clear that Kurdishness, Kurdiety, or we might call it Kurdism, a very, very strong sense of Kurdish identity encompasses so many other things. For example, history, language, culture, family, land is all brought together for many Kurds in this very strong Kurdish identity. So they have a very clear thing to fight for, which encompasses their whole context. And I think that strong a value and a cause means that people are very, very committed fighters. We've seen throughout history that people with a cause can often outnumber paid armies by 10 to 1, and that's been replicated in many, many different fights. And in fact, it's even mentioned in the Quran, so it might possibly be the only point on which ISIL and I agree. There's a verse that says, if you are 20, if you are steadfast, you can outnumber 200. And if you are 100, if you are steadfast, you can win, you can defeat an army of 1,000.
Right, and it's this identity, I guess, that I was alluding to in the first question, and perhaps I should have said identity rather than ideology, Lydia.
Ah, yes. Oh, yes. So yes, I would agree with that if that had been the question. They do have a unifying identity, that's true.
Okay, and Bilal, from your point of view, is it something, this search for autonomy, do you think it's something that can be achieved within Syria?
Can I make a contribution for your previous question? I think in the case of Kurdish people, identity and ideology cannot be separated from each other. For Kurdish people, their identity is their ideology and vice versa. So although their understanding of their Kurdish identity, what it means to be a Kurd, and how to frame this identity within an ideological framework it is very diverse, but at the end of the day, they unify their identity and ideology together. That's my point I would like to make. The other point, I think...
Yeah, actually, before you go on, sir, let me just throw that back to Lydia, because I know she wants to come in, and I'll come back to you straight away after that. But Lydia, do you want to just respond to that point that ideology and identity are one and the same?
I would like to, because we do see many other ideologies grafted on. So we have the very strong Marxist-Leninist ideology of the PKK and the YPG. And then there are Islamist parties within Kurdistan who have a different framing ideology. And so I'm not sure that they can be equated in that way. I don't know that you can say they're exactly the same, because people differ on other ideological frameworks throughout Kurdistan.
Bilal?
I think this is a very wrong reading of PKK and PYD, because these analysts suppose that PKK is still supporting Marxist-Leninist ideology of Cold War. PKK obviously give up this ideology, and every time it is updating its ideology. Now we could say that, for example, they are promoting new terms. For example, they say the House of Middle East for all people, the idea of cantonalism, giving up the idea of Greater Kurdistan, the death of nation state. And for example, they don't focus too much about, let's say, class struggle and so on. So all this Marxist-Leninist ideological is no longer shape the mind of PKK or PYD.
Okay, Lydia, just come back very briefly, because I want to bring in Lara.
Very briefly, I would say that that's not my experience of visiting the PKK. They quote Marxism to me.
Okay, well,
I wouldn't say that that's the view from the ground. I think possibly the ideology that's being espoused by the leaders isn't necessarily matched.
Lara Fateh, you're in the Kurdish part of Iraq. What's your view?
I think this actually offers, there's a moment of opportunity in many ways for the PKK to modernize, as Bilal was suggesting. I don't think they have modernized their theory, but this moment in time offers them an opportunity to do so, so that their actions match the rhetoric. And I think that would then provide a better base from which to move forward with the peace process in Turkey. And obviously that then it creates more stability from which to consider prospects for autonomy within Turkey for Kurds.
All right, I'll tell you what, let's move on a little bit. When the when the Kurds win a city, they reportedly mark some of the houses reserved for Kurds, and it's reported that some Kurdish checkpoints declare no Arabs allowed. And given their successes in the region, that's quite a bit of Kurds-only territory. In Iraq, Kurdish forces have captured about 25,000 square kilometers from ISIL since last autumn, including the key city of Kirkuk, which is rich in both oil and cultural significance for the Kurds. In Syria, they captured Kobane in January and Tal Abyad earlier this month, creating this corridor along the northern border and cutting off ISIL's main supply line to its capital, al-Raqqa. Forces affiliated with the Turkish Kurdistan Workers' Party have come within 50 kilometers of Raqqa by seizing the town Ain Issa and the military base near it. So let's return to the question that we talked very briefly, but didn't really answer a little bit earlier. Lydia, would you say that the Kurds can win autonomy in Syria just 50 kilometers from Raqqa now?
In some ways, they have won autonomy in the sense that they are running a region which they call Rojava, a historical name for the Kurdish region up in the north there. So it depends what you mean by can they win autonomy. They are running a state fairly, they've established basic services, for example, from universities to rubbish collection and policing.
All right, well, in that case, let me put it this way, can they maintain it?
Yeah. That's the question. That's the crucial question here. I think there are too many people against such a thing to make it easy to maintain. So autonomy, maybe we could say that they have a certain extent of it already. Keeping a region for themselves, I think, is going to be incredibly hard.
So my next question was going to be, does such autonomy benefit peace, or does it destabilize the region? It sounds like it's the latter.
It depends who you are, I suppose. For the people in the region, I think they would prefer to see Kurdish rule. But yeah, there would be a lot of reactions which could cause instability, yes.
Lara, from the point of view of those in Iraqi Kurdistan, how would they perceive a stronger Syrian Kurdish region?
I think the people on the street would be delighted to see it. It would obviously be part of the wider dream towards independence at some point in the future. But I think the main thing that people would be happy with would be that their fellow Kurds have stability and their rights protected. They didn't have any rights under the previous Syrian regime. So I think the fact that there would be progress towards protecting Kurdish rights and identity, it would make people very happy to see that.
And Bilal, we're speaking to you from Ankara. From the Turkish point of view, how important is it to the Turkish Kurds, these territorial gains elsewhere? Because, of course, as you've talked of, the Turkish Kurds are fighting their own battle.
I think now Turkish Kurds and Syrian Kurds or Rojava Kurds, they were emotionally, ideologically, nationally and socially united with each other. Today many Turkish Kurds go to and participate PYD and fight against ISIL. So now we could say that Rojava is a sort of has a vital meaning in the mind of Kurdish people in Turkey, and I think Kurdish people in Turkey, they want to see Kurds in Rojava. They must have their national right and autonomous region for their own.
And given the recent election results in Turkey, what would you say this gives? What kind of extra power does it give to Turkish Kurds and indeed Kurds across the region?
I think now after 7 June election, post-election, we realized that this result empowered Kurdish self-confidence. I mean, they are very delighted to see themselves as an independent political entity in Turkish political arena, and from now on they want to see themselves as an independent, very strong political actor regarding Kurdish question as well as other Turkish national questions as well.
And Lydia, would you agree with that the Kurds across the region have been empowered by the election result in Turkey?
Yes, I'm sure that's true, that people are glad to see more political strength of the Kurds in Turkey. It's the country with the biggest amount of Kurds. It's the country that has, to some extent, spearheaded the struggle for greater recognition.
And Bilal, do you think, as far as the position of Kurds within Turkey is concerned, is it going to make any difference in the long term to their campaign, given the position of the Turkish government as we see it at the moment?
Well, Turkish government at the moment don't give them any position. Even Turkish government, they don't consider Kurdish party as a possible coalition partner at the moment. But when we think in the long run, I am sure Turkey, the mind of Turkish government and Turkish political actor, they have to change their mind sooner or later.
Right, Lara, I just want to move on to this idea that we were talking about just now when I was referring to the last map, that when Kurds win a city, they reportedly mark some of the houses reserved for Kurds. I mean, this is going to be a problem. I mean, it's a problem now, but it's going to be a problem down the line as well when this is all over, because those kind of ethnic tensions will last as time goes on.
Yes, that's very true, but you also have to remember the history that goes before it, that many of those territories, I would say, have been regained, are territories that were Arabized in the past. So you already have Kurdish families who were kicked out of those places 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And so the Kurdish political system needs to show maturity to avoid future conflicts, that it allows those who wish to return to their homes to return, but it also offers an inclusive nature so that you can't make two wrongs don't make a right. Just because we were ethnically cleansed from the region before doesn't mean it's acceptable to do that back to people. It is their home. So the Kurds have to show a maturity of being inclusive and offering a fair system of governance in those areas.
That's, with respect, that's easy to say, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very easy to say, and it's very easy to look and diagnose the problems in the area, but it's not so easy to enforce. But what I wanted to put across is that a lot of the analysis is worrying about, making Sunni Arabs unhappy. People forget that those Sunni Arabs are not indigenous to those areas, that they were brought into those areas, as I said, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So it's managing the expectations of both communities, and that will not be an easy feat at all.
Lydia?
Yes, I'd like to just add a little bit to that, which is that to take the example of Kirkuk, which was Arabized in exactly the way you just mentioned, a traditional Kurdish area. After 2003, when a new constitution was written, the Kurds were promised a referendum on the disputed territory of Kirkuk. It was set for November 2007. So they were promised a political solution to one particular contested area, and they never got that referendum. So there are more recent there's a more recent sense of injury there, that they never got, as you might call it, Lara, a more mature process of going through a referendum.
Lara?
No, I agree, and I think actually there needs to be some credit given to the Kurdish politicians operating in Kirkuk. They haven't gone out for revenge. They have tried to pursue policies of inclusiveness, and they haven't turfed people out of the city. So I think they've, given that they perhaps don't feel that they've actually made any gains, and they haven't had the referendum, and they've been done out of this and that, they have acted in a much more mature way than other politicians may have chosen to do so. So I think they need to be given some credit for that. And, without a political solution, it's just going to go on and on.
Lydia, just one final statement from you quickly.
Sorry. Well, yes, I just wanted to say that the governor said that there will still be a referendum and Arabs will vote as well in that referendum, the governor of Kirkuk, Najmuddin Karim. So he is following that inclusive policy. So there is hope.
Bilal, would you like to comment on that element of the conversation?
Yes. For example, if we return to Syria again, in the times in 1960, when Assad comes to power, he tries to establish Arabic Crescent, and he drove many Kurds from their city, and he brought many Arab people to stay there. So now in places like Tal Abyad, Ain al-Isa, I think PYD and Kurdish Authority, they are aware of the plurality of this region, and they say that we don't want, our intention is not to establish a Kurdish dominion over these people. We want to rule together. So I think this idea of ruling together and living together is an indication of PYD political strategy and political ideology.
Okay, I just finally, Lydia, this will be the final question because we've run out of time, but I know it's hard to cast ahead, but how different do you think the map of Kurdish territories may look once all this, the fight against ISIL is over? Do you think that it will look significantly different from as it has done in the past?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. I don't know about significant. Oh, well, I guess it depends on what past you're talking about, because many of the areas that the Kurds have retaken from what wasn't in the Kurdish regional government's area are traditionally Kurdish or ethnically Kurdish. So if you're going back to the far past, then the map looks fairly similar in Iraq. That's not a very satisfying answer, is it?
All right, well, I'll tell you what, let's just throw it.
Future.
Yeah, don't worry, let's just throw it to Lara in 20 seconds. Lara, what do you think?
Well, I think the line on the map will look there as it should do. It will include Kirkuk in the Kurdish region rather than excluding it as it currently does.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. The time has flown by. Thanks very much indeed for an interesting conversation. Thanks to my guests, Bilal Sambur, Lydia Wilson, and Lara Fatah. And thank you for watching. As always, we would like to hear your thoughts. You can contact us on our programme page at aljazeera.com. You can also post your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or indeed just tweet us using @AJ Inside Story. From me, Nick Clark, and the whole team here, it's goodbye for now.